Playwright Joe DiPietro has penned two of the most popular off-Broadway productions currently running in New York. Now in its third year, I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change is an hilarious and oftentimes poignant look at relationships, marriage, and separation. With music by Jimmy Roberts and book and lyrics by DiPietro, I Love You provides an uncanny and insightful look at where we've come and where we're heading with today's relationships. DiPietro's other work, Over the River and Through the Woods, is both humorous and emotionally uplifting. In dealing with the dissolution of the extended family in America, Over the River helps us come to terms with our changing lifestyles and sense of family.
You're a good boy, Nicky. Stay near your family.
It's long distance. Talk fast.
Hi. Your son says I can't drive no more. Come visit Sue. We'll sit in my car and pretend it's moving.
Over the River and Through the Woods is somewhat autobiographical, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. To say the least.
To say the least. Yeah, it's a play about my four Italian-American grandparents, very much based on them, and their grandson, who works in advertising, which is very much based on me. And it's basically, they're what I call a functional family. They're a very loving family, but they're very loud. The grandparents are very old world. The son is very modern. Very successful, and he goes to dinner every Sunday at their house, and he comes to dinner one day with the announcement that he's got a job opportunity across the country in Seattle. The grandparents live in Hoboken, and the play is basically about them not being happy with that and having thoughts of their own on trying to get him to stay. And it actually, with the theme of the play, is really family and how much do you owe your family, and can you ever repay people for their devotion, which is a journey I think we all go through.
Bless us, O Lord, for these thy gifts that we are about to receive. And bless our lovely dinner guest and our lonely grandson. And may they find eternal happiness together.
Tango familia. I have family. That whole notion has changed in this country, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's exactly what the play is about. I think when my grandparents were around, I mean, their families, you know, they had certain rules. I mean, they worked hard, they put their kids through school, and they all pretty much, you know, lived in sometimes in the same house, much less the same neighborhood, certainly in the same county. But I think by the time you got to my generation, you know, we're just very mobile, and my two sisters live out of state. I live just across the river in New York from they still live in Jersey, and to them I was moving to Siberia. I mean,
yeah, but you're the Nick of Act 2, not the Nick of Act 1.
I am, yes.
You know what's tragic about this piece? It's not just about the dissolution of the American family, but it's also about the dissolution of ethnic communities.
Absolutely.
And the fractionalization of them, and that's sad.
Yeah, one reason I wanted to write the play is I think that's a whole generation that is dying out in a certain way. I mean, my two surviving grandparents, one's in their 80s, one's in his 90s, and it's just we don't see that sense, that type of person anymore. That really kind of old world person, I think, at least in my community, in my life.
Thank you, Aida, but I'm a vegetarian.
She's a what?
Vegetarian.
What the hell is that?
Animal doctor.
As much as we identify with this piece, everyone walks out with a different set of answers, don't they?
Yes. Well, I hopefully wrote it so you kind of root for both sides. I think you kind of want Nick, the grandson, to stay. But because you know how much he's loved, you know how much they need him, even though they drive him crazy, you know how much he loves them. But at the same time, I think, hopefully I wrote it so you understand that, you know, this is not the way things are, and sometimes you have to go, and the lure of a new life is very seductive to any young person. And hopefully, if both of those point of view come across, that's the conflict of the play. And I think the play has its kind of has a holdover an audience, because you really kind of want him to both stay and leave. It's like life. You want him to both stay and leave, but he can only do one thing, and in the end, his choice is, you know, is something that different people have different reactions to.
There's this wonderful dichotomy in the grandparents, too, because we see them almost unencumbered, childlike behavior, and yet they have these tremendously lucid, wise moments that just go to the core of humanity.
Yeah, I mean, that's really something influenced by my grandparents, who I think, especially growing up, you see your grandparents and you think, oh, they're just kind of these wacky older people, and they cook and they nag you and they bug you and they're funny and that's it. But then as I got to be an adult, and I was fortunate that I was able to know all four of my grandparents while I was, over 20. You kind of realize that, you know what, these people have been on Earth a lot longer than you, and they know a lot more than you do about really the essential things about life. You might know how to work a VCR, but they know, about what life is and what life means, and it's a good idea to listen to them when you can. But I think, what I did want to do was start the characterizations of them as you perceive them to be, which is broad and funny and loud and meddling, and then as the play goes on and Nick has to make his decision, strip them down bit by bit to really show who they really are.
So is the flip side of Nick here, I love you, you're perfect, now change?
Oh, that's interesting.
This is what we see in Nick's world when he's not with his grandparents.
Right. That's true, and that was written, and was written when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and that was written by a very unencumbered guy. That show, I think, one of the reasons that show is such a success is because it's so lighthearted. It's just basically fun. And it was written by someone who really had a life at that point that was very lighthearted and fun, as you oftentimes do when you're in your 20s. I mean, it's kind of got a bit of that wise-ass guy in his 20s writing it. So yeah, I think it's absolutely true.
I love you, you're perfect, now change speaks to the dissolution of the family, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's about people trying to connect in the 90s. It's about, the first act is about people being single and trying to meet someone and make a relationship work, and the second act is about marriage and all the way from beginning marriage to kids to divorce to widowhood to all those things. And it's very much a very modern take on, how difficult it is nowadays to meet someone and to fall in love, and the eternal differences between men and women.
Living, loving, and coming back for more. Without the third premise, we wouldn't have anything, would we? We wouldn't have society. No, and that actually is, I think, the message of the show, is that people keep coming back for more, meaning that it's no matter how bad, how tough love can be and how tough trying to connect with someone is, the point is to keep coming back for more. And I think, kind of like many things in life, relationships certainly, it's the journey and trying to get them and trying to make them work that's as important as the end result, because the end result also is constantly changing too. So
each bride has me dressed in a gown I detest, always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Musically speaking, everything's in this. It has country, it has pop, it has ballad, jazz, gospel.
Yeah. Jimmy Roberts, the composer, wanted to write a very eclectic score. When I'd written, many of the sketches were written before the music came in, and the sketches are all have a different feel to them. So Jimmy wanted to reflect that in the sketches. So he really wrote just a variety of music, which is great, which also I think is part of the fun of the show. It's not a typical Broadway score. It really has a very pop, contemporary feel in all types of music, and the music particularly comments on the situations. I mean, there's a woman in a bridesmaid's gown, and she sings, and I wrote that lyric just as writing a lyric about a woman who is a bridesmaid in a lot of her friends' weddings. However, she's never married, and all of her friends' marriages fail, and she looks in her closet one day and realizes she still has all the dresses from the weddings, the bridesmaid dresses, even though the marriages are dead. It's just kind of her musing on that subject. And I wrote it as just a lyric, and Jimmy said, this is a country western lament. I'm like, I didn't know what that even was, and he wrote it, and sure enough it was, so yeah.
And it's a comment, too, on society in that the dresses last longer than the marriages.
Absolutely, yeah, and people totally understand that.
Yeah. And what was ugly initially, the dress, somehow survives, but what was beautiful at the beginning, the marriage, falls asunder.
Yeah. Which is, see what I enjoy, because it's very much a comedy sketch and song, but they're all the sketches are really embedded with the real issues like that, stuff that you really can really think about it and take away with you. They're not just kind of silly, campy thoughts.
I will be loved, yes, I will be loved. Tonight.